to get you started, I was talking to you about this, Mar. What on earth made you decide to join your community board? There are active opportunities for people to, join your community boards now. Why did you do this? And if somebody's thinking about it, how do they go about it?
Well, me, my real interest in being on the community board came when my daughter started school. A lot of the issues and
I think your mic's not on.
you guys hear me? Okay, good. So there are a lot of now I'm yelling.
Yeah.
There are a lot of issues with the New York City public school system, and I really wanted to have a voice.
Sure.
I mean, I grew up in the West Village, born and raised.
Yeah.
In the West Village. I've lived on the same block for 50 years. My mom lives in the West Village. So, I really, really wanted my community to have a voice in the policies that affected my family and my community. That's all. And how do you do that? So your borough president's website is going to have the application, which is open until March 1st, on their website. You can also go to Who's My Representative, I think it's .com, but you can Google that, and you'll see what your community board is, and you can also go on to their website and find the application. And I advise you guys, attend a meeting. If you can't attend a live meeting, they're all, thanks to COVID, they're all on YouTube now. Look at them. We like to know that people are invested and will commit to doing the work.
If I stand back here, check. Okay, we're good. I'll be awkwardly behind you guys, like creeping in the back. Okay? I want to keep it with the community boards. Domingo, I know that from your story, you actually didn't even know the community boards existed. Yeah. Right? Like, what's up with that? I think there was a different type of community board that existed before you were there. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I think Carlina hit the point when she spoke about historically what these community boards have engaged in, what they've done to small businesses that seek to bring in resources to the community, but yet they might not fit the mold of what they perceive to be what they seek for the community. So I think for me, when I applied, it was more making sure that I represented my community, because how could we be in Washington Heights, 70% of the community board is white when 80% of the community is Latino, Latina. So I think representation is very important, and just keeping it real, not only with yourself, keeping it real not only with yourself, but with your community, you feel me? Because it's like you grow up in these spaces, you're not better than nobody regardless of where you are in life. So I feel that people have to come down certain pedestals and stop using little terms, and I want to get into that because that's one of the reasons why I engage in the community board. I might be a little bit unconventional when it comes to it, because you assume that people are pretty keep it real when they engage in conversations of power, but that's not the case. Power is wielded by certain individuals that put certain tools to be able to be their counterbalances. You feel me? So I think folks have to truly understand that when you keep it real with your communities about, yo, you know what? I gotta advocate, even though you got issues with homie cleaning cars in the street, I'd rather homie be cleaning cars in the street than sticking dudes up in the corner. You feel me? So we got to be real clear about what opportunity means, and not everybody might agree with it, but that's my reality and that's what I push for.
Okay. All right. I'm not even going to play up on that stage. We're going to go straight to questions, okay? Hold on. You have 45 to 60 seconds to get a question out here. I do not want to hear somebody preaching, okay? There must be a question. All right, the mic is yours.
Hey guys, I'm Greg with Tribe Tokes. We have a table in the back. Shout out to Kim B. My question is, Domingo said, reinvest in something you're passionate about, like soccer. So I thought that was a great example. I'm wondering, like, what are more examples of reinvesting in the community that you guys recommend? Because that's like what we're really trying to figure out. Thank you.
All right. So when we talk about reinvestments, we have to be clear in, you could invest in what you're passionate about. You also have to look at the community and understand that you're most likely, and this is where your research comes in, right? Because you're not going to enter a community without doing research. You have to understand what this community is facing. Historically, we've been impacted, we cannot act oblivious to the fact that some of the communities that have been able to sustain cannabis cultures are predominantly communities of color, right? We cannot assume that when my boy Pap says Uptown is the mecca to cannabis, but we're also the mecca of incarceration due to cannabis. You feel me? So, and I say that to say this, when you talk about reinvestment, assume, or not necessarily assume, look at the data and let the data inform you that a lot of these youth have been deprived of basic programming because it's easier to incarcerate them than to put them in a good, high quality program. And yeah, we have good basketball programs, good soccer programs, tenant rights. Let's build incubators and let's help young people start businesses.
I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, and I would tell you that I grew up in the East Village LES, which is like ground zero for gentrification. And so many people will come in and think like it's where you go to get a $15 cocktail. But there are people that are really suffering from displacement and landlord harassment. And you know, I have little leagues too, that $5,000 in discretionary funding from the city council goes a long way. So when you're looking at the fabric, obviously you want to be someplace where you're going to make money, and I want everyone to be rich. But like looking at how those communities have been affected, the history of it, especially local activism, and being a part of it in a real way, donations do go a long way, but understanding that giving those opportunities, local employment, youth jobs, just looking at how you're communicating with some of these groups, that communication piece is really important.
All right. Thank you, Greg, for that question. What I didn't tell all of you guys is if you ask a good question and it's under 45 seconds, I'm going to give you a Dope People t-shirt. There you go. All right. Next question. Oh, it's Lanice. We got a hitter coming through.
I just have a question. I'm really excited that you're, advocating for public service, for folks to join boards and commissions. I'm not sure about this board, but I know when I was on a commission not too long ago, there was the conflict of interest. So a lot of folks in this room might be interested in getting into the business. And so would-be equity operators found themselves having to recuse themselves, and sometimes not even equity operators, just regular business owners. And so there was a conflict. So my question is, I don't know the legalities of how this board works. And so just so that folks can plan, because maybe you plan on running a business, so you can't get on the board because you don't want to have to recuse yourself, but maybe your best friend never plans on running a business. So can you just make sure before folks go apply March 1st, apply, but so that they can think ahead about and if there's any conflict for the business, if they're gonna try and later, at that community, yeah, is there rules? Where will they go find the rules? That's my question. Where does someone go find the rules so they can avoid a situation or they know what the situation is? Thank you.
Is that for me? The Conflict of Interest Board. I mean,
Yeah.
Any government body, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Any government body that you come in contact with has very explicit and public, easy to find rules. So you just look them up. And if you have a question, you can always call the Conflict of Interest Board and say, would this be okay? Is there a conflict of interest? Ask.
You have a new board member.
I know the answer. This is for
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So basically, there has been individuals in the board who might own a business and they are up for a liquor license, let's say. All they have to do is be able to say what their conflict is and recuse themselves from that particular vote. That's usually how they do it.
Hey everyone, how's everybody doing today? So pretty much my question is this. I'm pretty sure we can all agree that the vast majority of people who consume cannabis have never participated in the industry due to the fact that it's been, underground in the shadows. So let's say somebody wanted to grow or do anything, they didn't have the opportunity unless they moved out to a legal state, which is not realistic for a lot of people. So what I want to ask community board members and also council member, how can we make it more equal? Whereas, for example, myself, I've been a cannabis user for a really long time. I started as a teenager, not a great thing, but for somebody who's interested in joining the industry, not just, I'm a developer, so that's where I'm gonna be in, but let's say somebody's interested in cultivation, processing, distribution, and all of this stuff. How can we ensure that there's an equal ground for them to participate in the industry that they kind of invested in because they put money into the market? And also, how can we address cultural differences? Because a lot of people don't agree that cannabis should have been legal. A lot of people don't even, because of the fact that it's been illegal, people have been brainwashed into thinking that it's a very bad thing. How can we address these things?
I don't mind. Sure. Can everyone hear me? No? I think actually I was actually thinking that I was just having that conversation in my mind before. I can remember, this is just not from the fire department perspective. I remember there was a campaign. Oh, sure. Can you hear me now? So I remember there were liquor advertisements all over the front of bodegas, and people in the community felt like it was enticing young people to drink. And it was liquor and cigarette ads. I don't know if anybody remembers that. So I think cannabis is going to have a similar hurdle to overcome when it comes to community perception and how people deal with things. I guess it's like a liquor store versus a wine and spirits place. You go some neighborhoods, it's a liquor store, in other places, it's wine and spirits. So I think the cannabis industry is really gonna have to find the right marketing and the right push to make sure they're reaching the right audience and not, and I don't think the cannabis industry would ever purposely target children or anything like that. That's not, but the perception is always there from the communities, from certain communities, that, oh, you're peddling this to our children, you're doing this. So there's gonna have to be some serious contemplation around how do we bring this to communities and help people understand that, one, cannabis is healing, two, that cannabis is for adults and it's for everyone, and that times have changed and all the wrongs that were done behind cannabis before are now being dealt with. So I think it's gonna have to be more of the industry itself really, and all the participants, people, the providers, like you said, the growers, the processors and all these things are really gonna have to deal with this past perception and the past wrongs and help bringing people into this new reality about and around cannabis.
Because we have to talk about ancillary businesses as well, right? How about they start hiring ad publicists from our community to be able to expand these campaigns. So one thing I always tell individuals is don't limit yourself just to be engaged as if you have the money, because we have to be very clear. This is an industry that's gonna require a lot of money to be built in. Speaking to Tremaine these past few months, the way she says it is, get your ducks in order. There's no incubator at the OCM and state level that's gonna help provide grants to legacy individuals to be entered the market. They haven't even identified how legacy individuals could use their own money without the IRS getting involved to open up their own businesses. So we have to be very clear on what the current rhetoric is, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to bring back money into our communities by partnering up with communities and these incubators setting up hubs where there's a bunch of people in our community who do a lot of social media content, digital content. How are we partnering up with our communities to use that money there as well? Because there's gonna be a lot of opportunities for individuals to engage in and to be able to tap into this emerging market or new market, you know? So I think it's really important to be creative also and not limit yourself to just thinking opening up a business is the only way I can engage. Also think about one tip. They're saying the Department of Health, they're going off the guidelines of the Department of Health. Vet yourself with the Department of Health now and try to get contracts once they start releasing them. So there's ways of engaging without necessarily engaging in that market directly by operating a business, but let's operate a advertisement company as a result of this industry, you know? So there's a lot of ways for individuals to be engaged in this. And I think a lot of the conversation also is for the individuals coming from outside of our communities, look for ways to partner up with individuals in our community as well. Because as I understand, you might be a person of color from all over the country, but some of the people directly impacted have similar skills, figure out ways of integrating them into some of the models that you currently have going.
Thank you all for your time tonight. So tonight you spoke about your experiences with approving and inspecting everyday businesses in your communities. Can you speak to experiences approving one-time events? So does the community board or city council have input on that? Is the FDNY inspecting every single one-off event in their territory, or is it a random sample? And when I say one-time events, that can range from like a 4-hour loft, wedding reception to a 3-day beer festival, for example. So I'm curious about this with your like SLA permitted event experiences.
Sure, I'll answer for the portion that's the FDNY side. That was an excellent question, by the way. I never even considered one-off events. But so in those situations, you're gonna have to reach out to the fire department and make sure, one, we're gonna have to come inspect and make sure things are in compliance when it comes to fire code. But the other aspect of the FDNY that's gonna be involved is making sure you provide medical care. So making sure there's an ambulance on scene just in case anyone is intox or has an issue or, you know what I'm saying, that kind of thing. So making sure, just reaching out to the fire department and making sure those safety precautions are in place it's gonna be big. Ambulance on scene, depending on how big the event is. So cannabis is widely loved and enjoyed by many people. So if you have an event that's gonna have hundreds or over 100 people, and especially New Yorkers love outdoor events, you wanna make sure that people are hydrating properly and make sure there's an ambulance on scene ready to deal with any kind of ailments or sickness, things like that.
As a one-day catering license, like that's what you're talking about for a one-off party, they actually don't go through us anymore. I think they used to, but not since I've been on the board. They go through the state SLA. We deal with like street fairs and block parties and experiential pop-ups. We just did one for the Harder They Fall. Well, we didn't do it, but we approved one for the Harder They Fall movie on Netflix, Black Cowboy movie. That was a beautiful setup they did at Gainsfort Plaza. It was amazing. So that's the kind of stuff we do. So state SLA for one-day catering licenses.
I'm gonna borrow that. Oh, there it go. Okay, the other thing I would add is that as your businesses or even your nonprofit, as was mentioned, a one-day event could be a wellness fair, and it could be centered on, right, cannabis, pain management, whatever it is. That also is FDNY. Those are NYPD permits. If you have also a contract with the city and you're funded by, let's say, the city council, there are also expectations for fulfilling your contract. That's a little bit down the road, but there are something called deliverables as well. And so our expectations of people that are funded by the city are to be able to say, we're doing, 3 events outside for this many people, and we're gonna prove that we ran the event, and we're actually gonna submit proof and documentation that I fulfilled every part of this contract. So also making sure that those contracts are going right to local people, communities of color. Those are all kind of factors to be considered, especially when we're talking about city funding and city events. And I know my office has certainly helped people navigate some of those bureaucracies and getting, 5, 6, I don't know how many permits for one event that could absolutely be spectacular. But we want to make sure you do, dot all those I's and cross all those T's, and we certainly want to be helpful.
So I'll hone in into what it looks like in Community Board 12 when you want to close a block, right? You have to get 250 signatures from the surrounding, from that block area, and then you have to fill out usually special permits. And I think Carlina go to your city council member, and they'll help you navigate when it comes to that bureaucracy. The Community Board is a volunteer-based pseudo-government agency, right? So when it comes to that, sometimes the office managers are pretty overwhelmed. So I would encourage you to visit your local representative, and they should be able to help you navigate the application process. But prior to that, like for instance, our community board requires 250 signatures on top of that form that would have to be submitted. Because one thing you'll understand is every community board is different. So every community board might have different committees. They might have different bylaws. So it all depends on your area. And then also engaging at that level, your city council member to help you navigate the special permits procedure.
That was a good question. Good question. All right. This is our last question. Make it quick.
All right. My name is Jessica. I was born and raised in the Bronx, Community Board 7. My Bronx people. My question is, so I signed up for my community board email list. So everybody's real busy. Wake up, just get on the email list, look at the minutes, find out what they're talking about. And what I'm noticing is that they're not talking about cannabis. So, and I am noticing that there are different committees in every different community board, right? Because I'm following multiple, where my mom lives, where I live, where everybody, right? Check out, wake up and pay attention to the community boards where your family lives. So my question is, how do we go about making sure that cannabis is a part of our community board's conversations the way that we have committees? Because I've noticed that there's a lot of committees. So I just can we empower the audience to go to their community boards and make sure that we can have a cannabis committee and make sure that cannabis is on the table for a conversation at every community board meeting?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's so early on.
Move it around. Oh, sorry. I was trying to tell you to move it around.
I take the microphone? Okay. So we did not, am I back on? Okay, sorry. So we didn't have a cannabis committee, and honestly, I don't think anybody was thinking about it. And so what I did, because I was thinking about it, was I went to my friends at other community boards and I said, hey, are you guys talking about this? Are you forming your committee? What's it gonna look like? What about the equity directive? Because the downtown community boards are majority white. So I just took the lead. And if you guys wanna make sure that your community boards do that, tell your electeds, go to the community board and testify at a public hearing and say, you guys need this and you need it now because the conversation is happening. And that's all, just go tell them. That's the beauty of community boards, right? These public hearings. You can go and have your voice heard, and you can go back and you can bring your friends, and it's It's awesome. It's a wonderful way to really be a part of the policies that affect your lives.
Just add that, you know, in the community boards, what happens is very much like the city council. So people operate in committees and they pass resolutions and it goes to the full board. So just like the council, we work in committee and then we pass it as a full council. And today we had a full stated meeting inside of City Hall. Well, it's a hybrid, but you get the point. And I would say that the other thing that you could do is, I'm trying to think of legislation on how the city can be more involved in equity in cannabis and equity in economic development regarding cannabis. And so if there is a piece of legislation, some community boards have also issued resolutions or passed resolutions in support of certain legislation or certain initiatives. So you could actually have the discussion started within the committees and then ask for a resolution to be passed that will actually be memorialized in the minutes and then could spark further discussion across the other community boards. So you could look at it different ways, whether they're going directly to public session, maybe advocating for a certain piece of legislation or an initiative or something that you're passionate about, and get the community board support. So you can try kind of different methods and strategies.
At least for us in CB12 up in Washington Heights, Inwood, we've been having this conversation for the past year. So the chair of business development, Francisco Lopez, he's been leading a lot of these conversations at the community board level. But what folks have to understand is there's certain limitations as well, and there's a processes in place. Don't count just on one component to be able to express what you feel as a community or as a member of a community, right? Individuals should be having conversations, engaging in conversations. Don't wait for a community board meeting to be able to validate what you already feel. And that's what I try to tell people. It's like the community board could often be an amplifier, but it could also sometimes be a suppressor as well. And people need to understand the difference. It takes longer sometimes when in reality, you control the pace when you organize a group of individuals for the community and you take over a meeting and you say, this is the community's priority. Because some individuals might have their own particular agendas. So for us, this was our priority because, like, being the chair of public safety, you don't have to I'm reminded every month of what mass incarceration and school to pipeline looks like. You know what I'm saying? NCO is not going to alleviate a plethora of fucking racism, you feel me? So it's like you can't just depend on one entity to validate what your concern is. What I would say is tell them what it is and make sure they create an ad hoc committee and you participate in it.
All right, guys, that concludes this panel. Please give them a round of applause.